Maneva na sema PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV de osia dem yopo.
Still on trade, the Oil Palm Development Association of Ghana reveals the country loses about $400 million annually to struggles, describing the practice as a significant economic and security threat. And these and many more coming live here on the to Market Watch here on Big Analysis. And this time, Rob, we're going straight to Washington, where George Wiafe is standing by to give us update on the IMF meetings and what are some of the key highlights that has come through. There's been revision of Ghana's growth prospects in 2026, and what was taken into consideration is what we want to understand. And George was there live and is going to tell us some consideration that were taken. George, it's good to have you with us, and you're looking fantastic. George, how's the place?
Well, by the grace of God, it's okay. It's not bad. Trying to move around and get all the important meetings as and when it matters, and quite difficult, plenty of things happening at the same time. Don't forget there's a global interest, there's a Ghanaian interest, there's an African interest, and how do you move around all these meetings and make sure you don't miss out on any important thing and then report it? So it has been very interesting, and I'll say very challenging, covering some of these international meetings and conferences.
Can you give us some highlights on the delegation of Ghanaians, that leadership that were there, and what were some of the issues that came to light? We had you sent us information concerning the finance minister reiterating that Ghana is in a position to attract investment and ensuring that we are a place to do business. What's your assessment?
I think, Wilson, it's been very, very critical for a lot of people since, we're shut out of the international capital market when it comes to raising international funds. And it's very, very critical. Now, away from all the laws that have been passed under the IMF program, what this meeting for the finance minister was very, very critical was to connect to all these international investors. You can talk about the likes of the BlackRocks, the Franklin Templeton, the Citibank, the Merrill Lynch, and all those other big international pension fund managers, and they play in this space. And again, if you look at the returns that a Ghanaian bond will offer compared to just under 1% bond or government papers issued by the US government, you understand why they are always interested in investing in the Ghanaian bonds. And therefore, this annual meeting was very, very critical for the finance minister to move on and do that personal assurance with these investors that they are committed to fiscal discipline. What has been the major challenge for some of these investors is that, they see some of what is happening in the economy, and the fear is that if they take their pension funds and they buy these bonds, what is the assurance that when the time is due, they will get their money? Also, don't forget what happened with the debt nation program. Mm-hmm. So that personal one-on-one bilateral engagement was very, very critical for these offshore investors, for the assurances that, listen, we have the fund program, and that should give you some comfort. There's even some talk about some other initiatives that government wants to undertake that could again give some comfort to these investors that, you can come and do business in the country. Not only on the investment front, but also bringing in fresh capital to do business. Are we assured that if we bring in funds and there's time due to pay us, we are going to get our money? Also look at the Ghana cedi as well. Don't forget that they bring in these money, some of these bonds, they change to Ghana cedis, and then they invest. When the time is due to repatriate some of these monies, what will be the situation of the local currency to get their monies on time? So that engagement with these offshore investors, these global investors, these international commercial banks was very, very, very critical. But before even this meeting, the talk of town, and many people say that really the program is going to end somewhere in August. So why is it a big deal? Listen, if you engage any investor here, Winston, any international bank, any donor partner here, their concern is after Ghana exit the program in August, how will things look like? And that has been the talk of town here in terms of the assurance, the commitment to. Do
you foresee that particular atmosphere, especially how the investor community looking at how we've been able to pay our debt or sustain our debt obligations in the last few months? And like you mentioned, if you listen to the atmosphere there, it tells a different story. Is it likely to reflect in government decision come August or before August 2026?
I mean, in terms of the bond payments, we should know what has transpired to these payments. But for some of these investors, these are long-term investors. They are looking at the next 5 years, the next 10 years. So it's not about what is happening now that should give them any comfort. And that is why for all these offshore investors, they are now talking about beyond the program completion, after the program completion, are we still going to see the fiscal discipline by government? Don't forget that we are going into an elections. And if you know, that has always been our bane in terms of the overruns and the excesses, the debt overruns. And therefore, most of these investors, they are not looking at what government has paid here. They're looking at what will happen over the next 3 to 4 to 5 years. And that is why they are saying that when this program ends, what is the comfort? If you put in place all these laws, is that enough? Don't forget, Winston, that we had the gift mix in place, but we had a debt exchange program. So for them, they're still looking for something more to give them that comfort, that assurance that everything will be okay when Ghana gets out of this program. Because don't forget that the interest you're seeing now, the assurance you're seeing now, all of them has been influenced by the fact that Ghana is under an IMF program. So they are still looking for something more to tell them that in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, these are not short-term investors who are looking at a 1 year, 2 year thing. They are looking at over the next 5 years. So they are looking for something more than just something that will happen this year or next year.
And George, you've been speaking with the investors. Do you have any sense of their optimism as to whether Ghana can keep this moving forward? Do you have any sense of whether some plan on bringing in capital into the economy? What's the investor sentiment looking like now?
I think that this meeting that Arthur Forson held yesterday was very, very, very critical, very, very important. And that is why that assurance that the finance that gave them was good. But also there is some talk, and very soon we'll give our viewers or listeners in Ghana about an arrangement that government is working that could give some comfort to these investors that after August this year, you are still assured of that fiscal discipline. Because listen, we are in the 17th IMF program. I believe that this assurance was given when we exited the 15th program. This assurance was given when we exited the 16th program. So it's like talk is cheap. We've seen some of these investors who have engaged them off record now being a little bit measured with their fears that, okay, things are good. You could see Moody's and all those things. So they are a little bit optimistic now, but they are still asking for more assurances that could see them commit more funding. And don't forget, it's not just about the bond investment. There is even talk about government now in discussion with ExxonMobil for them to come back. Look at all these things. So it's not just about the bond investment, but attracting the likes of Shell, the likes of Exxon, for them to come back into this country, like the likes of one of the biggest gold processing companies to come into the world, to come to Ghana. And all these things are very, very critical about the political atmosphere, about the fact that if there's a change of government in 2028, am I assured that that new administration would also respect the terms of agreement when it comes to investments and all those things? So that is also very critical. And now, that's why I'm saying that for most of these investors, they are looking beyond 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years.
What is the outlook that they gave for the West, the Sub-Saharan African region? And I also want to get from you, what did they consider before reviewing Ghana's growth prospect for 2026?
Listen, I am not flattering or exaggerating. I've had the opportunity to engage some of the technical guys working on Ghana's program in Washington, D.C. here. And you hear words like, listen, they are surprised how the program has performed. Listen, in terms of some of the benchmarks and everything, Ghana has gone way beyond those benchmarks. If you look at the program tenets and outlook, they never thought that we could see inflation coming down to about 3%. So I don't know what is working for Ghana. Yes, you can't take away the work that was done the previous years, even before the administration took over, but also the commitment on the part of this government as well. But something is just working for Ghana that if you engage some of the IMF funds themselves, They are surprised at how things are moving fast for the program. They never anticipated that under this program, we could have built a reserve of more than 14 or more than 13 billion Ghana cedis. So based on all these things, the commitment of government and how we are progressing very fast when it comes to those structural reforms, that made them revise that growth rate from 4.6% to the 4.8. And another interesting thing is that even going into next year as well, they've also upped the growth rate for next year, so going beyond 5%. Now, you're worried about inflation. Well, the IMF and the World Bank are saying that end year, going into next year, we will still be within the single-digit range when it comes to inflation. So all these things are also impacting the investor sentiment. And that is also giving them some comfort that there will be some high level of fiscal discipline, maybe still going into an election year.
And George, before we let you go, given how the Middle East situation has been very fluid, today we had some sort of ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, and that's resulted in oil prices coming down, gold prices going up. But then is the fund worried about Ghana's position moving forward, or investors, are they worried about how Ghana might withstand some of these shocks? Do they think that structural change is still too weak, or do they think we're in a good position?
I think for the structural changes, it's work in progress. And listen, when you look at all the other African countries in terms of the growth outlook, and I stand to be corrected, it appears that Ghana was one of the few countries that our growth was revised upwards. So it appears that we are building the buffers, we are building the shocks that could help Ghana mitigate these external shocks. And that is why if you look at the countries, Ghana was one of the few countries in Africa that our growth rate was revised upwards. If looking at what is happening right now in the Middle East, it appears that even the tensions or things would lower a little bit. But if you engage the fund, they think that we are getting there. A little bit of political commitment will do for us going forward. If next year we are doing 7.9% for inflation, we are doing 8% for inflation, meaning that over the next 2 years, we have stayed within a single-digit inflation. And I stand to be educated. Maybe this might be one of the first time in a lot of time or a lot of years that we are seeing this. So the fund is optimistic. The fund thinks that we have built the buffers, we are working on the shocks. Even though Ghana will be hit, the impact wouldn't be that bad compared to our peers in the region.
And finally, we know the meetings are expected to end tomorrow. Are there any engagements or any meetings that you are keeping an eye on for us?
Well, there are still behind-the-scenes Ghana engagement with the bilateral creditors, what we call the development partners. There's also a meeting that will be our press conference by the IMF Managing Director. I know the IMFSC, that is the advisory body for the international, and that'll be happening some few minutes ago. And it'll be critical to hear what the IMF MD would say, because, there were three, even the situation was so fluid that the IMF itself couldn't have just a one scenario in terms of the global outlook and what will happen to Ghana. They had to do 3 scenarios. And it appears that if this peace talk should work, then maybe we are getting out of the woods. But she also warned that when even the Strait of Hormuz is open today, it will take some time for global prices to correct itself. Yeah. And look at what is happening to gold. That could be good news for us. Look at what is happening to oil. If in a day we've done about more than 10%, then let's see what will happen the next few days,
George, finally, I want to get from you, from what you've been exposed to in terms of the information outside and also domestically, how our local economy has been performing. What's your overall assessment of this year's spring meeting?
Well, I think that if you want to look at it from the perspective of government, it has been good for the finance minister having an opportunity to engage these offshore investors. And, sometimes that face-to-face engagement is very, very critical. That has been very, very, very helpful. And so if you look at from that perspective, it is good. If you also look at the fact that, I think that, again, Winston, and not exaggerating, if you engage some of these offshore investors, if you engage the fund officials, Ghana still has this goodwill among the investor community. You might not believe it, that they are still optimistic that things are going to be fine for us. There's still this thing about the IMF where they want to use Ghana as a poster boy. Listen, look at the state of Ghana's economy in 2003 and look at it now, and how they want to use Ghana to convince other developing countries and other countries that see what has happened to Ghana. Come to the fund for support and you see what will happen to your economy. The fund is saying that they even have a $50 billion fund available to help countries that have been hit badly by this development in the Middle East. So among the fund itself, we are kind of a poster boy. Among the development partners itself, because of in terms of the peace in the region in Ghana and all the rest, we also have some good name among the development partners. Listen, if you follow our program in 2023, how things were fast-tracked for us. I mean, having the opportunity even to be in US here, I saw some of the things myself, even what the US had to do for Ghana. Mm-hmm. We hold some dear heart among the development partners, the IMF, and even the investment community as well. So this meeting, let's say it has been good for Ghana, and it looks like great things ahead for us if we stick to fiscal discipline and the political will going forward.
Thank you so much, George. We appreciate your insight always. Anytime we mention IMF, we know George Uafe is there. Thank you, George. And we'll certainly be waiting for more updates when you come back in Ghana, and also fantastic time in Washington as well. Yes, that was George Uafe there giving us insight on what is actually the key update and development. These are
posts on that background. Another indication that this video is fake. Finally, always check who is posting the video. In this instance, the post is from a group calling itself Citizens for a Healthy Nation. When you click on the link, it tells you they are into advertising and marketing based in South Africa. This should tell you it is not from Joy News. In another instance, the post is by an individual who describes himself as Paisano. But again, the page is labeled as advertising and marketing with a number that is reported to originate from the Dominican Republic and an 809 area code that has been associated with scams in the past. This is another indication the video is fake and not from Joy News. Now that is how you spot the fake. So if something feels off, it probably is. Trust your instincts and double check before sharing or acting on any information. Or better still, you can report to the police or the FDA or come to our offices at Joy News to verify any advertisement.
I am in Athalia Kwanzaa in Takrady, and this is Joy News. Independent, fearless, credible.
Welcome back to Beyond the Numbers, and this is a big analysis where the big issues become the bigger conversation here on Beyond the Numbers. I'm doing this with my brother, Caleb. How's it going, bro?
Listen, always great to be here.
Yeah, I'm sure this morning's watch it didn't really reflect the way it was. Anyways, it's good to see you. And also, our colleague Kofi J will be joining us next week. Right now, he's chilling in the Bahamas somewhere. And everywhere. Yeah, so as we said earlier, we're bringing you updates on what has happened on the market, the new announcement by government's intervention at the pumps, and that has to do with diesel and fuel. We want to understand from you just this morning, yesterday and today, how have you fared in terms of getting to the pumps, fuel stations? How much did you buy your fuel? What do you make of this intervention as it kind of impacted your life? Because we want to hear from you as well. But before we get to that, we want you to see the big picture about how this decision, what it is reflecting on government, what the government is letting go for you to feel this particular cushioning at the pumps. And this is where we go straight to the numbers. What you see on the screens right now is a very interesting dynamics, and these are the benefits you thought for the next 4 weeks, you're going to be reflecting at the pumps, which is basically 36 pesos on petrol and diesel of 2 Ghana cedis. That's what you're feeling. Initially, many were asking that it will be between 1 cedi 50 pesos, but many were also surprised that government could come up with these numbers. But Caleb, what do you make of this assessment?
Yes, so because of the tensions in the Middle East, price of petroleum products were going through the roof. Now, we were doing petrol of around 9 cedis, 9.99 to be exact, and then we went all the way to 13 cedis, 30 pesos.
Yeah.
And then for diesel, we're doing somewhere around 11 cedis, and we went up to 18. Some were even doing 19 cedis at the pumps. So seeing this and seeing that the war was not ending anytime soon, pressure was on the government to introduce measures. Other countries have already gone ahead. Some other countries started introducing 4-day work shifts so that people can stay home for 1 day and conserve fuel. And then other governments went the tax route. Governments also decided to go by cutting some of the taxes and margins on petroleum products. Now, in petroleum products, we have 2 of them from the government. We have the taxes and we have the margins. Now, the government did not touch the taxes. So taxes go directly to the government's budget. So if the government touches the taxes, after forcing the entire team of the finance ministry, you have to rework the entire budget because there's going to be a shortfall. But then decides to go for the margins. Now, with the margins, they go directly to the operations within the downstream sector. So NPA, Boss Energy.
So those are basically the private sectors. So players in that sector.
The state-owned enterprises. So the NPA, BOST, we also have the Petroleum Hub Development Corporation, and there are some of the other SOEs within the downstream sector. So they benefit directly from the margins. Now, there's a way that the OMC, that the private sector, also gets affected by the margins, and we'll get there very shortly. But then the government decided to touch the margins. Now, we have the prime distribution margin. This goes to BOST. We have the BOST margin. This also goes to BOST. We have the fuel market margin. This goes to the NPA. And we have the UPPF, the Unified Petroleum Pricing Fund. This also goes to the NPA. Yeah. But I've already spoken about this so many times that this also funds the free fuel for the political appointees. So these were the margins that the government decided to touch. Now, for petrol, the government touched each of these margins a little bit. But then for diesel, the government scrapped everything. So for diesel, we are not paying any margin on diesel at the moment.
So they took away all the margins
from diesel.
That is how they ended up having the 2 Ghana cedis on that.
And now that's interesting because if you look at the total margins on petroleum products, they are 1 cedi 37 pesos. But the government took out 2 cedis for diesel. So it means that there's a shortfall of about 63 pesos. Now, we don't have clarity yet on how that's being funded. But then we do know that for diesel, there's a shortfall that is being covered from somewhere else. And we don't understand how that is being covered for now. Because the total margins on diesel is 1 cedi 37 pesos. But the government took out 2 cedis in margins. So there's a 63 peso difference, and that's coming from the UPPF. So we heard from the Chamber of Oil Marketing Companies, COMA, and they said that so if you supply your diesel, NP is going to take some time before they pay you for that transportation. So within the short period, for diesel transportations, the OMCs are supposed to cover that. But under Ghana's current regulations, the OMCs should not cover their transportation. It's supposed to be covered by the NPA. But because of the scrapping of these 2 cedis, the OMCs will now have to pre-finance the transportation, and then at a later date, the NPA will then reimburse them. So now, this is why the OMCs are complaining, because it depends on how soon NPA comes back to reimburse you. We know how some of these things work. Some are very slow, and once it's slow, it affects the operations of the OMCs. So now there's some conversation between the OMCs and NPA to ensure that there's some balance. But then after the reduction of 36 pesos in margins for petrol and 2 cedis for diesel, we've seen the price floor drop. So the price floor for for diesel was 17 cedis.
Which is the red one for diesel and blue one for petrol.
So it dropped from 17 cedis 10 pesos to 16 cedis 10 pesos. Now there's been some confusion because when the government came out, they announced that they've reduced the margins by 2 cedis. So people are expecting that if you reduce it by 2 cedis, diesel should come down to 15 cedis if you take out the 2 cedis. But then it went down to 16 because even though government has reduced its stake, the other factors within the oil price, the petroleum price and makeup went up. So crude oil prices went up. The exchange rate did a little bit poorly, just a little bit from, I think, 10.98 to 9.11. So most of the other factors within the petroleum price build-up went up. But then we felt the reduction in 1 cedi because government took out 2 cedis. So if government did not take out the 2 cedis, price of diesel, for instance, would have reached almost 9 cedis. Almost 19 cedis, 18 to 19 cedis. But because of the reduction in 2 cedis, it has come down to 16 cedis. So this is the explanation for why people don't see that prices have dropped by 2 cedis. Because I've been getting questions, so many people are asking me that the government said they've reduced 2 cedis on their margins. Why haven't diesel prices dropped by 2 cedis? So that's the explanation. And the same thing for petrol. Petrol has now dropped by 3 pesos, from 3 cedis 30 pesos to now 13 cedis 27 pesos. So that's a 3 peso reduction in the price of petrol, even though the government reduces margins by 36 pesos. And remember, I asked you this question as to whether the government should focus more on diesel and then forget about petrol, because diesel has seen the sharpest rise, as you can see from there, from 12 cedis up to 17. So we now see that the government actually did prioritize diesel.
Yesterday it was selling around 11 cedis, 56 pesos.
Yes.
13 cedis, 33 pesos. I've seen the marginal fall from 13 cedis, 27 pesos for petrol.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. And also for diesel, we're seeing from 17 cedis, 10 pesos to 16.1 pesos. Looking at where it has down from as at June 2025, around 12 cedis. But it appears the dynamics here is basically the tension causing the rises.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And most of the other factors remain the same. The cedi was still doing okay. The cedi is actually doing phenomenal, because in times like this is where we see pressure on the cedi. But the cedi has been very stable, between 10.8 to 11 cedis per dollar. So these are the main reasons why petroleum prices are not through the roof yet.
Yes.
And then we have to talk about the cost. Where's it?
Interesting enough, we want to see how this consumption appearing, or basically how much we consume. According to data from calculations from MPA, we used that from COMAC, and we came out to this number. So the monthly consumption, Ghana and operations from mining to transportation to all, in terms of monthly consumption, we consume
diesel,
about 230 million liters of diesel per month. And if you look at for petrol, we see about 4, which is basically in terms of intervention. If you calculate down the cost, you get to the point of 460 million Ghana cedis. And one will wonder, how did we get by these figures?
Yes, so the government reduced their margins on diesel by 2 cedis. So we just did a simple calculation of how much Ghana consumes every single month, because this is going to be in place for 4 weeks, which is a month. So in a month, we do averagely 230 million liters of diesel alone. So if you do the calculation of how much government has reduced its margin by, there's going to be a shortfall or a loss of 460 million Ghana cedis for just diesel. On petrol, the loss is going to be about 93 million Ghana cedis.
This is what we have
for petrol.
Yes.
Based on 258 million liters of consumption every single month.
Just as we're building this conversation, you should know that there's always a cost to every free gift government decides to take. And these are the elements we want to make you understand and appreciate here on Beyond the Numbers. So you're watching us anywhere in Tamale, you're watching us in Bolgatanga, Wale, Accra, Sunyani, Ahoy. You can call into the show and let's hear your voice, especially wherever you are. Are you feeling it's at the pumps? If you are a long journey driver, certainly some are going to funerals across, so traveling from Accra to Kumasi this weekend for either a funeral, a wedding, or a naming ceremony. All of them are taken into consideration based on where you're moving, especially factories and corporations that are into big-time manufacturing. Certainly diesel to power the generators and to power serious high-tech machines at the factories. And all these are factors we consider. Looking at the producer price inflation that occurred last month, there's been a marginal reduction in the outlook. Looking at the construction and industry sector, how they perform so far. All these are factors we take into consideration when we are analyzing things here on Beyond the Numbers. So we want to hear from you. What do you make of these particular factors that you've made? You've considered government. Certainly, should all things be equal within the next 4 months, government will be paying, it will be costing government this much in terms of diesel, 230 million consumption just for diesel, paying about 460 million Ghana cedis. If we talk about petrol, around 93 million Ghana cedis per month. So the next 4 weeks, basically, that is 1 month. This is how much government is considering. And this is what you benefit. And some will say we pay taxes, so let us enjoy.
But then there's an interesting caveat, because, like I mentioned earlier, because the government did not charge the taxes, but went after the margins, this 500 million in total shortfall, the 500 million in total shortfall is not going directly to the government's books. So remember last time when we opened the phone line, so many people were concerned that once this happens, the government might turn around and then, bring a tax handle to recoup what they did, like what happened with the COVID era.
Yes.
But then this time it's different because the government did not touch the taxes. It went after the margins, and margins goes towards the NPA cost and their operation. So this is not going to be a direct hit to the government's books. So the government is pretty much okay, and we don't expect this to be significantly impacted within the government's books. Now you can come around and say, well, it's about the sector. So if there's any problem within the sector, the government, because of this shortfall, would have to step in and save the energy sector if there's any issues. So that's where the government might decide to come in later on. But then we have made the argument that some of the...
So meaning in extreme cases, that is when government consider reviewing some taxes to ensure the sector gets some cushioning as they've given to
That's if, because of this 500 million shortfall, there's any adverse impact on the energy sector. That's when the government will have to step in, and then that's where some taxpayer funds might have to come and support the sector. But then through this intervention, the government has managed a very clever way to prevent taxpayer funds from entering the sector or from losing out from the sector.
Great. Don't WhatsApp the line. Just call the numbers on your screen. And if you call, we beg your pardon. Kindly ensure your message is brief, straight to the point, and the languages used must be clear, concise, and respectful. We will say respectful, meaning that don't use vulgar language, which may not be accepted here on Joy News. But we are open the phone lines. We want to hear from you from Accra, Tamale, Bodikatanga, Sunyani. Makaswa is a whole town on its own. People, my friends in Kaswa. Yes, we have Abdul from the eastern region. I don't know whether it's in Koforidua or anywhere, but Abdul, you're live on Beyond the Numbers. Let us hear from you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity given me. Yes, we are domestic consumers. Our own habit has big for our daily activity. In fact, submit the document is significant. Don't buy. I realize that this will not help companies that buy bulk. So we expect our private consumers, the result will say so or that. So we actually don't feel it much. The margin is not minimal. It's significant. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Abdul, for calling to the show. We appreciate your insight here as well. You can also call us on the numbers live on the screen. Where you buy your for, how are you feeling the recent cushioning by government intervention? The core initial debate was the margin. Now the margins have been determined, and now we know the conclusion after cabinet decision that came to light, considering all factors, including the Middle East tensions, Russia and Ukraine, Iran, USA, and now we have Stephen, who is calling us from Kumasi. Stephen, you're live on Beyond the Numbers.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And in fact, I'd like to appreciate the government for all that interventions has put in to help we the consumers. In fact, through his intervention, he was able to help to stabilize the petroleum prices, which has also helped the transportation world first. So we thank him, we appreciate him. We give him the benefit of the doubt to also improve the economy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for calling, speaking with us here on Beyond the Numbers. And we also want to hear from you. Yes, people are appreciative, and also people want clarity, and this is why we're here. Going beyond the numbers, beyond the 2 cedi, beyond the 35 passwords you enjoy, cumulatively 553 million Ghana cedis monthly shortfall government is likely to record in terms of the operational analysis that we've made on these numbers using data from COMAC, the MPA, to ensure that we give you the averages, which is basically in line with our projection on Joy News. We have Francis, who is calling us here in Accra. Francis, you're live on Beyond the Numbers.
Thank you very much. Actually, I've seen your program this afternoon, and I'm told very, very much happy about the government reduction that it did on fuel. Actually, I don't know what to say. This is government that cares for people, especially for we the poor. I have nothing to say. Let's bless NDC, bless Bahama.
All right, thank you, Francis, for speaking with us here on Beyond the Numbers. We're still taking some few calls. So you call and let's hear from you here on beyond the numbers as well. So we want to understand basically, and which the numbers we are touching on. We want to see the 533 million Ghana cedis in terms of costs that government is incurring, or let's say the sector is incurring.
Yeah, the sector.
The sector is incurring holistically because the taxes are still intact. And we want to also see which key institutions should these monies initially be being paid will reflect, and which will be coming to shortly for you to appreciate the SOEs which will be affected in terms of their margins. Now we have Abdul Aziz from Tamale. Salam Abdul Latif. Salam alaikum.
PENDREAM TV. Now, so far so good. Say open online portal le Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.